Hello. How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Should be a great show. We got a number of things to discuss here. So, yeah, we're doing a lot of these streams lately, but it's worth it, right? It's worth it to do these streams. I'm so glad that you all are here. We got plenty to discuss. So, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. And I think, yeah, we're gonna do what we always do. We're gonna have ourselves a great program. So let's do it.
Century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
All righty. Welcome, everybody. Oh, wow. A lot going on. Plenty of things that we can discuss. The way we do things, for those of you who may not be familiar, or maybe you just forgot. Maybe you forgot the way we do things. I will remind you that the way we do things here is that I give my opening remarks, which is what it is I feel like talking about when I'm live. Then from there, we do a roll call and we call people out as we see, find out who it is who's watching. Always a great, diverse bunch of people watching. And then after that, I answer questions for the rest of the night. So while I'm giving my opening remarks, I'll be taking note of all the questions that come in. So if you have something you want me to talk about in the second half of our program, by all means, send me a Rumble rant on the Rumble, a Rockfin tip on the Rockfin, a super chat on YouTube, and I will do my best to give you an answer. May not be the answer that you're looking for, but I'll do my best to give you a reasonable answer to your question. That's the way it works. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Couple announcements before we get going here. Announcement number one is the Portland conference that's coming up. December 2nd in Portland, Oregon. The Center for Political Innovation will be having its national convention. It's going to be very, very, very awesome. And we need you there. You can register to attend the event on the Eventbrite. You can donate to help the event happen. Donations are appreciated. If you'd like to donate, you can send it on Stripe, and I can give you the donation link. So there's that option, and the link is down below in the description. We are going to have our national convention. It's going to be a great event in Portland, Oregon. So be there. And here's the link for the ways to support the national convention if you would like to do so. Right. So there you go. There's that. And I hope that you will join us. So there's that announcement. Now I have one other announcement for now, which is that we do every morning on the CPI YouTube channel, we do have a morning message. And for a while we stopped doing that, but we started it up again. We have morning messages every morning. So tune in to the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel every morning. Start your day with revolutionary hope and optimism. And if you feel so moved, make a morning message. If you're part of the Center for Political Innovation community, if you just like what we do on this YouTube channel and you want to spread the message, by all means, create a YouTube channel or create a morning message. Watch a morning message every morning. And make one. The more, the merrier. We really like it when people do that. So we have those two announcements. We've already got one super chat from Fishopes about California. And so if people have anything else, the second half of the show is when I answer people's questions. So, if you're on the Rumble, you can send a Rumble rant. If you're on Rockfin, you can send a Rockfin tip. And if you're on YouTube, you can send a YouTube super chat. That's how I answer people's questions in the second half of the program. So with no further ado, I am going to jump into my opening remarks, but I'll be taking note of the questions to answer in the second half of our program. Folks, I don't think we've been as close to World War III as we are now since the Cuban Missile Crisis. This situation is extremely dangerous. And what I find disturbing about it is that there seem to be so many voices on social media and in the media in general, including voices that seem to be part of the peace movement or claimed at one point to be advocates of peace, that don't understand how dangerous this situation is. Israel is attacking Gaza, says that it's going to siege and raise Gaza, ground invasion. The USA has a aircraft carrier strike group in the Mediterranean Sea. Israel is blaming Hamas and its activities on Iran. Hezbollah says it has an obligation to defend the Palestinians. We are in a really, really dangerous situation. This could spiral out of control in 20 minutes to the point that nukes go off. People don't seem to realize how dangerous this situation truly is. We are talking about World War III. Iran is aligned with Russia and China. Israel is aligned with the United States. The United States has its military forces in the Mediterranean to back up Israel. Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed revolutionary organization in Lebanon, is saying that it will back up Hezbollah, or it will back up Hamas on the battlefield. Iran has the capability of destroying Tel Aviv with missiles if it is attacked. Israel has nuclear weapons that it is capable of using. This is all really, really, really dangerous. Iran is aligned with Russia and China. This is all very, very, very dangerous. And the mainstream media does not seem interested in telling people how dangerous this situation is. And instead, our mainstream media just wants to tell us how evil Hamas is, how much Israel is the victim, and that just seems to be all the mainstream media wants to talk about. And many of the peace voices, that were very good at calling for a de-escalation with Russia or China or even Iran or North Korea, they are just beating the drums for Israel and calling for actions against Iran and against Hamas that would escalate us toward World War III with Russia and China. This is a very, very bad situation. I hate to be Mr. Negative here. It's very, very bad. This is a very, very bad situation. I don't know how we get out of this. I have a feeling that we will get out of this. I could be wrong, but I have a feeling there's not going to be a nuclear exchange, that there's going to be some kind of maneuver that will get us out of World War III. But I can't guarantee you that. Somebody's got to stand down. Somebody's got to make a concession. And neither side wants to be the first one to do that, because that'll be a sign of weakness. And this is not good. This is not a good situation. I don't know what the end game is here. In 2013, when it looked like the USA was going to bomb Syria, U.S. mainstream media was whipping up what was proven to be a lie, This claim that Bashar Assad was gassing his own people, which was later debunked. But based on that, it looked like the USA was going to bomb Syria, and Syria had the backing of Russia, and it looked like we were getting pretty close. Now, it wasn't as close as the situation is now, but it was getting pretty close. But then they found this magical third option, and Syria joined the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. Syria gave up its chemical weapons, welcomed inspectors in, and that was the end of that for a while. So let's hope that there's some kind of third option here. But right now, they've turned off the power and electricity in Gaza. They've allowed no food or fuel or anything to get into Gaza. They are bombing Gaza, and the Israeli military is preparing a ground invasion of Gaza. Hamas, of course, is pretty prepared to fight the Israeli military as they come in. Hezbollah says that it will back up Hamas on the battlefield. Hezbollah is backed by Iran. Israel says that if Hezbollah intervenes on behalf of Israel, they will attack Iran. I mean, this is all really, really, really dangerous. This is all extremely dangerous. I'm not the only person who knows that. I'm sure there's plenty of people in the American government and in the Israeli government and in the Iranian government and in Hamas and in Hezbollah and in Russia and in China who understand how dangerous this situation is. But it's extremely dangerous. I mean, this is an extremely dangerous situation. The next 2 or 3 days could have disastrous consequences if there's not some kind of resolution to this. It is an absolute nightmare that we have gotten this close to the edge of the cliff. We're pretty close to the edge of the cliff, and it's utterly terrifying. It's absolutely, utterly terrifying. So, I mean, obviously, if there's a nuclear war, we're screwed. So, I guess we have to continue raising awareness, continue shaking our fists at the sky and announcing how outraged about it, and continue with our work trying to build an anti-imperialist movement that could actually change things. There are a few things that give me hope. For example, I think you remember that I talked about how at Harvard University, they had this doxing truck. Do you remember this? They had this truck at Harvard that is driving around with the names and faces of all the students who support Palestine on it. Well, I was heartened to see, not happy about the doxing truck, obviously, because that's a ridiculous attack on freedom of speech, just basically, going after a group of students. I was heartened to see that 2 very strong Israel supporters, 2 very big supporters of Israel, Candace Owens and Vivek Ramaswamy, 2 conservatives and big supporters of Israel, have opposed the doxing truck. I don't know if you've seen this, but Candace Owens and Vivek Ramaswamy have said that's not okay. Even though they're big supporters of Israel, even though they don't agree with the students at Harvard who condemned Israel, as conservatives, they are against cancel culture. Candace Owens said that she took many positions in college that she now regrets. She used to be a liberal before she became a conservative, and they have been sparring with Megyn Kelly on social media, saying that it is just wrong that Harvard University is allowing this to go on and that this truck needs to be removed, that this is a vicious cancel culture campaign. Wow. That gives me hope. That absolutely gives me hope. Right? The fact that there are people on the right who are even pro-Israel, but yet they realize that that is a vicious attack on freedom of speech. You have the right to sign whatever petition you want as a college student. If all of us were haunted by a petition that we signed when we were in college for the rest of our life, even if we changed our opinion on it, that wouldn't be fair. That gives me hope. That's one thing I can be optimistic about. The other thing is that at the end of the day, we all know that the only way the Palestinians can see their situation improve, the only way we can get to a world where events like this, where we're forced up to the edge and we're having a big standoff and the nuclear war clock starts counting down, the only way we can get to a situation where that doesn't happen is for the new economy that is emerging, the BRICS economy, the anti-imperialist bloc, the Eurasian Economic Union, the Belt and Road Initiative, the Bolivarian alternative of Latin America. The only way for this to get better is for the new emerging economy to grow and to get stronger. And as Russia and China and this new economy based on economic growth that rejects the Western imperialist model, as it gets stronger, it will be able to embed itself in more places. The world will be more connected with trade. Trade will be carried out on a win-win basis rather than a predatory basis. Growth will expand, and we cannot have these kind of situations. So if the leaders of the United States have any sense, they will understand how important organizations like the Center for Political Innovation are. If there's anyone with any sense inside the State Department, inside the U.S. government, inside the Congress, inside the Department of Justice, inside the executive branch, they will realize that having organizations like this that advocate a new America that is rebuilt in line with the anti-imperialist camp is going to be vital in preventing World War III, in preventing the United States from being further isolated around the world. And anyone with any common sense in the world is going to realize that in order for us to get safer as Americans, in order for there to be more global peace, organizations like the Center for Political Innovation in the USA must expand. We must become bigger. We must have more influence, just like the rising anti-imperialist bloc must have more influence around the world. We here, as advocates of socialism, as advocates of a new America created on new economic foundations, rather than the rule of profits, we have a vital role to play in all of this. What we are doing is vitally important, and the conference that we're having on December 2nd is also vitally important. And so I would urge anyone who's concerned about preventing World War III to come to this conference, to help us put this conference on, to send us a donation to help us cover the costs. We need your help. There's really no way around that. We need your help. And the situation, the standoff that the global community is currently facing just basically reiterates how gosh darn important what we are doing is. There's no way around that. So if you can help us put on our event, if you can help us to build a layer of understanding and a layer of cooperation between the anti-imperialist bloc and the rising new economy and the people, the working families of the United States, if you can do that, you're on the right side of history. So there we go. Terry doesn't like it when I use the phrase right side of history, but I apologize, Terry, but other people might like it. It fits Marxism, so to speak. But that's the situation that we're in. Now, I did want to talk about some other things, because when World War I broke out, the great Marxist Rosa Luxemburg was one of the few German Marxist leaders who stood against the war, called out the German Social Democratic Party because it abandoned Marxist principles and supported the war. It was a crime to oppose World War I, but she continued to oppose it, and she wrote an anonymous pamphlet. She couldn't sign it by her name or else she would be arrested, and she eventually got arrested and was sent to prison anyway. But Rosa Luxemburg wrote a very famous anti-war pamphlet at the time that Germany entered World War I. It's called the Junius Pamphlet. And it is a really, really important piece of anti-imperialist writing. And so I am going to read to you an important selection tonight from the Junius pamphlet by Rosa Luxemburg, explaining that imperialism, capitalism in its monopoly stage, will inevitably lead to the breakdown of civilization, and that we can learn from the fall of the Roman Empire what the result is. So I am going to read to you from Rosa Luxemburg's Junius pamphlet. This is from chapter 1. Socialism is the first popular movement in world history that has set itself the goal of bringing human consciousness and thereby free will into play in the social actions of mankind. Let me repeat that. That's actually a pretty heavy statement. Socialism is the first popular movement in world history that has set itself the goal of bringing human consciousness and thereby free will into play into social actions of mankind, meaning that right now, the activities of the human race are largely dictated by the erratic nature of the market. Socialism strives to have the organization of production, the exchange of goods and services, the economy, rationally organized according to the wishes, the collective wishes of humanity. Socialism says we shouldn't have the chaos of the market anymore. We shouldn't have a society dictated by the drive for profits, but rather the will of human beings should dictate the social actions, the collective activity of mankind. For this reason, Friedrich Engels designated the final victory of the socialist proletariat a leap of humanity from the animal world into the realm of freedom. Meaning that when we finally take control of our economy, when we finally rationally organize the means of production, this will be human beings finally leaving their animal condition and asserting their humanity, asserting their creative power. That it will be finally human beings becoming fully human and becoming free. This leap is also an iron law of history bound to the thousands of seeds of a prior torment-filled and all too slow development. But this can never be realized until the development of complex material conditions strikes the incendiary spark of consciousness will in the great masses. The victory of socialism will not descend from heaven. It can only be won by a long chain of violent tests of strength between the old and the new powers. The international proletariat, under the leadership of the Social Democrats, will thereby learn to try to take its history into its own hands. Instead of remaining a will-less football, it will take the tiller of social life and become the pilot to the goal of its own history. That is what we are struggling to do. We are struggling as human beings to take control of our actions, to not live at the will of greater forces, the will of the market, the will of nature, but to take control of our own destiny as a species, our own ability to create technology, to seize control of our existence as human beings and define our own existence. Now, she goes on. Rosa Luxemburg continues. Friedrich Engels once said, bourgeois society stands at the crossroads. Either transition to socialism or regression into barbarism. What does regression into barbarism mean to our lofty European civilization? Until now, we have probably read and repeated these words thoughtlessly, without suspecting their fearsome seriousness. A look around us at this moment shows what regression of bourgeois society into barbarism means. She's talking about World War I. This world war is a regression into barbarism. She's talking about poison gas. She's talking about trench warfare. She's talking about thousands and thousands of people being gunned down with machine guns. She's talking about airplane bomber raids. She's talking about the horrific reality of modern warfare that unfolded in 1914. The triumph of imperialism leads to the annihilation of civilization. At first, this happens sporadically for the duration of modern war, but then, when the period of unlimited wars begins, it progresses toward the inevitable consequence. Today, we face the choice exactly as Friedrich Engels foresaw it a generation ago. Either the triumph of imperialism and the collapse of civilization, as in ancient Rome, depopulation, desolation, degeneration, a great cemetery, or the victory of socialism. And that means the conscious, active struggle of the international proletariat against imperialism and its method of war. This is a dilemma of world history. And either or, the scales are wavering before the decision of the class conscious proletariat. The future of civilization and humanity depend on whether or not the proletariat resolves manfully to throw its revolutionary broadsword into the scales. In this war, imperialism has won. Its bloody sword of genocide has brutally tilled the scale toward the abyss of misery. The only compensation for all the misery and all the shame would be if we learn from the war how the proletariat can seize mastery of its own destiny and escape the role of lackeys of the ruling class. She's saying that if the working class had had the proper consciousness, if the working class and the socialist movement had understood what their job was, they could have stopped World War I, but they were unable to do so. And now World War I is raging across Europe, she says, and it's showing what capitalism in its monopoly stage of imperialism ultimately leads to. And at first, yes, it just goes on for a war. But eventually, this horrendous reality of World War I will become daily life. Depopulation, desolation, and degeneration, a great cemetery. But she goes on. There's one more paragraph. One more paragraph in the first chapter of the Junius pamphlet. She continues. Dearly bought is the modern working class's understanding of its historical vocation. Its emancipation as a class is sown with fearful sacrifices, a veritable path to Golgotha. Now, what is Golgotha? Golgotha is the hill on which Jesus Christ was crucified. It is the place of the skull, the place where Jesus Christ was crucified. The working class, and with this horrendous event called World War I, has purchased, it's bought an understanding of what its job is: to save humanity from barbarism. Its emancipation as a class is sown with fearful sacrifices, a veritable path to Golgotha. The June days, the sacrifice of the Commune, the martyrs of the Russian Revolution, a dance of bloody shadows without number. All fell on the field of honor. They are, as Marx wrote about the heroes of the Commune, eternally enshrined in the great heart of the working class. Now millions of proletarians of all tongues fall upon the field of dishonor, of fratricide, of lacerating themselves while the song of the slave is on their lips. This too, we are not spared. We are like the Jews that Moses led through the desert. But we are not lost, and we will be victorious if we have not unlearned how to learn. And if the present leaders of the proletariat, the Social Democrats, do not understand how to learn, then they will go under to make room for people capable of dealing with a new world. Now, you want to talk about a powerful, powerful piece of writing. The Junius pamphlet, the illegal anti-war pamphlet from Rosa Luxemburg. I just read that to you. That is the last few paragraphs, the last 3 paragraphs of the Junius pamphlet's first chapter. It is so beautiful and so powerful about how the horrendous reality of World War I was showing that imperialism deteriorates into barbarism. And just as the Roman Empire fell, but did not replace itself with something higher, it simply deteriorated, that too could happen to the Western civilization. The West could very easily deteriorate into barbarism if imperialism just continues to go its course. And it is the duty of the working class, the proletariat, to realize its historical mission and take control of history and reinvent Western civilization to be socialist. If not, if it continues the route of imperialism, it will simply lead to barbarism and regression, depopulation, degeneration, a great cemetery. That is what Rosa Luxemburg wrote. And we are seeing that. However, what makes the situation today different than the fall of the Roman Empire and different than the fall of the events of World War I is that today there's not just one axis in the world. The Roman Empire was the only civilization. They were Pax Romana. They ruled all of the known world. And so when they fell apart, there was nothing to replace them. World War I, you had the colonized world that was under the boot. You had China that was still in the century of humiliation. You had the Western capitalist countries that were battling each other, and that was it. But today there is an alternative in the world. Eurasia is rising. The BRICS are rising. And if the West deteriorates into barbarism, Eurasia will continue to rise. The question now is not a question of many times, and this is the problem, the anti-imperialist left, right? You get a lot of the left that aren't even anti-imperialist. But among the anti-imperialist left, you get a lot of them that adopt the weather underground, weatherman understanding, right? That the workers of the whole world are so oppressed by imperialism, and they're just waiting for us, the Americans, to move so that we can open up space for them. And I sat through many workshops in the Workers' World Party hearing that argument made. The people of the third world are just poor and oppressed and struggling, and they're waiting for the workers of America to move. They're waiting for the workers in America to move. No, they're not. No, they're not. Nope. China ain't waiting for America to move. They're building the Belt and Road Initiative. They're rising up. Russia's not waiting for America to move. They're defending the Donbass. They're building the Eurasian Economic Union. They're increasing their presence and their trade with African countries. They are not waiting for America to move. No, there is a whole new world, a new world that came into existence because of the Russian Revolution. Russian Revolution of 1917 led to Stalin industrializing Russia and raising it out of poverty, led to the Chinese Revolution, which led to China now being the second largest economy in the world because of communism. There's been a wave. You're on the list. There has been a wave of countries that have broken out of Western capitalism and lifted themselves up. There's a whole new world that's rising. The question is, will the West deteriorate and continue to deteriorate into barbarism and throw off some nukes on their way down? Or will a section of the United States that has common sense say there's a new multipolar world arising? We need America. We need a big section of the American economy to join this new economy and start organizing itself around growth and development. That is the question. And only the Center for Political Innovation can give you that understanding, right? The PSL, they want to be the good Americans. They want to be the good Americans waving Palestine flags and burning the American flag and chanting, "Fuck America." That's what they want to be. But we are the ones saying that our country is deteriorating into barbarism. And the only way out of it is to break out of Western capitalism, break out of capitalism and move towards socialism and align ourselves with Russia and China and Iran and Venezuela and all of that. So we need a new government in this country that serves the working class and its interest of development. We're the only ones saying that. Now, there are obviously people that agree with us, people like Nick Brana of the People's Party, people like the Party of Communists, Chris Lully, good group of folks. But we're the ones that are shouting that message from the heavens. And we are the ones that are championing that message of constructive socialism and anti-imperialism, saying that the problem is an international financial order that is centered around keeping the world poor so that Wall Street bankers and London monopolists can make themselves rich. It is imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, the international financial oligarchy that is the danger. And there's a big chunk of the world that has broken out of that system. And it is in the interest of the American working class, but also of the American small business owner, also the American lower level capitalist. It is in the interest of the bulk, the overwhelming majority of the American people in all classes, most specifically the working class, which is the majority, for America to join the rising economy and engage in win-win cooperation and restructure its economy in a way that growth is no longer held back and that the banks and the factories and the industries are organized in the interest of the public, and that we have a society where the economy is organized to serve public good, not the wealth of a small elite. That is what we are advocating. And this is just common sense. And we are advocating what Rosa Luxemburg was just talking about there, right? She began her pamphlet. What did she say? How did she open it? I'm not going to read the whole thing again, but I'm just going to show you the opening. How did she open? She opened. What was the opening? Socialism is the first popular movement in world history that has set itself the goal of bringing human consciousness and thereby free will into play in the social actions of mankind. We want the people of America to have control of the economy of America and exercise their free will to say, we want jobs here, we want schools here, we want power plants here, we want funding for scientific research here, we want to make a better life for our children over there. That is what we are striving to do. We are striving to apply and assert human will over the means of production and thus prevent catastrophic events like World War I or like what is in danger of breaking out in Gaza right now. Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. Now, I'm going to put some, if you're triggered by this, fuck you. No, I'm serious, right? I'm done pandering to people. I'm going to put some serious, heavy Marxist philosophy on the screen. And if this bothers you, and if you think this is a cult, and you think it's cringe or whatever, fuck you. I don't care, right? I'm not here to pander to you. I'm not here to try and be cool and hip. I'm going to put some stuff that might look like gibberish on the screen, but I'm going to explain it. I'm going to explain what it is. I'm going to explain to you why it's important, and you can take it or leave it. But many times on these streams and in presentations that I have given, I have quoted this first phrase: A does not equal A. What does A does not equal A mean? No, I did not get this from Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand said A equals A, but she was saying that in response to Friedrich Engels, who in the Dialectics of Nature said A does not equal A. Now, this first A can never be the same as the second A, because all things in the universe are constantly changing. That these two A's cannot be identical, because no two things in the world are alike, because the world is in a constant state of change. A does not equal A. You never step into the same river twice. You never step into the same river twice. A does not equal A. That is a basic point of Marxist philosophy, of dialectics. That the universe is in a constant state of change. A does not equal A. However, I want to follow up A does not equal A with a quotation, phrase you can find here in the little red book. You see it's written there below. One must always divide into two. Let me repeat that. One must always divide into two. We understand that. One must always divide into two. That within everything exists contradiction. And we understand that when it comes to the universe. We understand that out of the capitalist order that overthrew feudalism came the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. We understand that out of the overthrow of hunter-gatherer civilization came the landowners and the landless and the slaves. We understand that one must always divide into two. Whenever you have something, that something develops two contradictory aspects. We understand that. That's a basic Marxist point. One must always divide into two. And what we don't understand, and what I'm going to spend the rest of my opening remarks explaining to you, is that our movement has divided into two, and America has also divided into two. And that what the Center for Political Innovation can offer is an accurate understanding of how our movement has divided and how America has divided. When the Russian Revolution happened, it was the first place in the world you ever had a communist government that stayed in power. You had the Paris Commune of 1871. They were only in power for like a month or two, and then they were overthrown. But the Russian Revolution was the first place that the Marxist movement took power. And when the Marxist movement took power, it divided into two. Lenin died, and two leaders emerged among the Bolshevik Party to replace Lenin. And they carried with them two political lines. One was the line of Stalin, socialism in one country, and the other was the line of Trotsky, the permanent revolution. And both of them represented an aspect of Marxism. Stalin represented the drive for stability. Stalin was from a small village in Georgia. Stalin was a community organizer and a labor union organizer and an agitator. And Stalin said, with central planning and control of the means of production, we will organize the economy based on 5-year economic plans. We're going to build power plants. We're going to build electricity. We're going to make this country rise up into a great fortress of socialism that will be capable of defeating the Nazi invaders, the German invasion that is inevitable. Stalin represented the section of Marxism, the part of Marxism, the economics of Marxism that strives to overcome the anarchy of production and organize production upon a predetermined plan. That's what Stalin symbolized. Stalin represented the people whose lives are chaotic and unlivable because of capitalism. Stalin represented the worker who fears unemployment. Stalin represented the unemployed people, the hungry, the wage differentials, the rising prices. Stalin represented a section of the broad masses of people, the peasants who wanted land, the factory workers who wanted stable jobs and guaranteed employment, the parents who wanted a better life for their children. Stalin represented the part of the Marxist worldview that strives for stability and economic growth. That is what Stalin represented. Trotsky, on the other hand, Trotsky did not spend his life in Russia organizing labor unions. Trotsky did not spend his life editing mass popular newspapers to be distributed to the broad population. Trotsky spent his life in exile in Vienna, in Berlin, in Paris, in London, and in New York City. And Trotsky became a revolutionary intellectual who entertained the middle class and the revolutionary intelligentsia. He hung out with Sigmund Freud. He hung out with Benito Mussolini. He hung out with Alexander Parvus, who was a German intelligence officer who was funneling money and manipulating people in the revolutionary movement. He hung out with all these great intellectuals, and he developed this theory of permanent revolution, that communism must be spread to the West, and we must have a desperate crusade to behead every last king and every last capitalist and tear down everything. He took the ideals of the French Revolution. He took the words of William Blake, "I shall not cease from mental strife, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem." He took that to its literal conclusion. He became a permanent revolutionary. And he advocated that the Soviet Union militarize all of the economy and simply function as a temporary military holdout in the all-out crusade to march communism into the world in an all-out, desperate, bloodthirsty crusade. But that's in Marxism. Don't think that Trotsky invented that. Karl Marx had his fair share of that as well. With the dialectical philosophy that says the way history marches forward is through conflict, bloodshed, with the bloodlust of the revolutionary intelligentsia. There was a big aspect of that. The atheism of Marxism, the rebellion of Marxism, both Stalin and Trotsky represented an aspect of the Marxist teaching. Why? One must always divide into two. Stalin took Marxism and became a city builder. Trotsky took Marxism and became a vandal. All things in the universe are constantly changing, and one must always divide into two. And what you could see over the course of the Cold War, as I've explained in many of these streams, is that after Stalin's death and after the Second World War, the socialist countries became more and more and more city builders. Deng Xiaoping developed Deng Xiaoping theory. Poverty is not socialism. To be rich is glorious. You got the rise of Baathist Arab socialism. You got the rise of socialism with Chinese characteristics. And now in our time, we have Bolivarian socialism. We have not capitalism, but Islam in Iran. We have a global anti-imperialist bloc that has taken the city builder part of Marxism and applied it and dumped a lot of the other stuff. They've dumped the atheism largely. Maduro is a Christian. Daniel Ortega is a Christian. The leader of the Russian Communist Party is a Christian. The Baathists were Muslims. Right? They've taken the destructive desire for chaos. They've dumped that. And now we have the city building tendency globally, which takes the city builder Stalin aspect of Marxism and applies it to build the anti-imperialist countries. Meanwhile, Trotskyism, the permanent revolution, the bloodlust of the middle class intellectual has become the Western left. It has become George Soros and his Revolution Incorporated. It has become the anti-communist, anarchist, Guy Fawkes wearing liberal woke left. The woke left is Trotskyism. China is Stalinism. But Stalinism has changed and become way more city builder than Stalin was. And the woke left have become way more pessimistic and destructive and bloodthirsty and stupid than Trotsky was. Trotsky and Stalin started from the same place. They were both Marxist-Leninists. Trotsky took Marxism, Leninism, and he went one way, and the result of that is now called wokeness. Stalin took Marxism, Leninism, and he went one way, and the result of that is now called the city-building tendency in the global anti-imperialist camp. One divided into two, because A does not equal A, and you never step into the same river twice, and the world is constantly changing. Many Marxists do not seem to understand. They seem to think everything changes except Marxism. They seem to think the whole world is constantly changing. A does not equal A. You never step into the same river twice, but Marxism is always the same. Wrong. Doesn't work that way. And that's why these people are on a hamster wheel. And that's why these groups are not growing and expanding. Because they're expecting the world to be exactly as it was in 1960 or 1980, and it ain't so. The whole world is changing, and Marxism is also changing. And Marxism has divided into two. And it is only the city-building tendency, the Center for Political Innovation, that puts forward the brilliance to understand this. This is the breakthrough that has defined our organization. We are city builders. We understand that Trotskyism is the basis of the synthetic left, that Stalinism is the basis of the global anti-imperialist movement of today. We understand this stuff. Nobody else does. Only we have the brilliance to say that just like the rest of the world is constantly changing, Marxism is constantly changing too. One must always divide into two. A does not equal A, and Marxism has divided into two, and we understand that. However, and I've said this to you all before in different forms, but now I will explain it in a way that it must be explained. America has also divided into two. right? We know it all, or we should know it all. Maybe you don't know it all, right? Maybe the schools have gotten so bad they don't even teach their own ideology anymore. But when I was in school, we learned that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. We learned that there were certain principles upon which the United States was founded. The United States was settled by various religious groups from England that rejected the Church of England. The Church of England, the Anglican Church, the King, they rejected it. 1649, King Charles got his head cut off. That was the English Civil War. Oliver Cromwell became Lord and Protector. And various religious groups were formed in the 1640s. The Puritans, the Ranters, the Diggers, the Quakers, the Baptists. Many religious sects were formed in Britain that rejected the rule of the Anglican Church and believed in democratic ideals, and also rejected the divine right of the king. And Oliver Cromwell became the Lord and Protector, and eventually he died, and they brought the monarchy back. And after they brought the monarchy back, these religious fanatical groups in England were still there. They couldn't quite live in English society anymore because they had cut the king off, the head of the king off. They had won religious freedom. They were allowed to exist, kind of, but they still were not in good standing. And we know that the Puritans got on the Mayflower and they came here. The Quakers came here and set up Pennsylvania, which means Penn's Woods, William Penn, right? But various religious dissenters came and set up the United States. And the idea was that we would bring the most radical ideas of the bourgeois revolution in England to the United States. And the bourgeois revolution in England, just like everywhere else, had multiple sides to it. In Britain, the rallying cry had been life, liberty, and property. In the United States, we incorporated that as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But what does it mean to pursue happiness? Doesn't liberty mean you don't have slaves? Doesn't all men also include women? There was disagreement on these points. What about the Native Americans? A big section of the Declaration of Independence says that one of their grievances against the King of England was that he wasn't letting them go expand westward and kill the Native Americans. You read the Declaration of Independence, some of the grievances: taxation without representation, government, not rule of law, government of man, etc., unlawful search and seizure. But one of their big objections was the king was holding them back. They wanted to go expand westward, seize more territory from the Native Americans. And in the South, the economy of the United States that was being set up in the South was largely based on slavery, a barbaric criminal practice, a genocidal practice. If you look at what was done in Louisiana, where people were being worked to death, a death camp years before Adolf Hitler, the Angola concentration camp, the Angola death camp. Read about that. Read about the slave plantation of Angola. That was Auschwitz. That was Auschwitz before poison gas had been invented. What they did in Angola, right up until the end of slavery in Louisiana. So the ideals of America were mixed. There were some early Americans that were socialists, believe it or not. In fact, the word socialism was first used in the English language by Robert Owen. And Robert Owen was a Welshman. He was from Wales, and he was a factory owner who saw how bad the situation was and he built in Scotland New Lanark, which was a model socialist city. And then he got on a boat and he came to the United States and he set up New Harmony in Indiana, a socialist community in Indiana. Believe it or not. on the one hand, the ideals of the American Revolution believed in people's right to go out and work hard and achieve their dreams, to pursue happiness, believed in people's right to have their own spiritual relationship with God and not have the state interfere with that, their freedom of conscience, to wrangle with moral questions, to ask themselves what is right and what is wrong. On the other hand, a big aspect of the founding of this country was the belief that screw everybody else, I'm on my own. Other people don't matter. There's no collectivism. As Margaret Thatcher said, there is no such thing as society. There are only individuals. Slavery, the killing of Native Americans, the working of people to death in sweatshops, and building the railroads. I mean, on the one hand, you had this very, very radical notion that people should have freedom and that people can make their own destiny. On the other hand, you had this notion that people should just do what is in their self-interest, that they have no obligation to their community and to society, individualism above all else, what we call liberalism. One was the notion of historical progress. The other was the breakdown of any group consciousness. And America has divided into two. What started out as one country divided into two, and we had a civil war. The slave system that was tied in with the British Empire, and the emerging industrial economy of the North fought each other. And Karl Marx took sides. Karl Marx knew that Lincoln wasn't perfect, but he took sides in the American Civil War. He was on Lincoln's side. He was solidly behind Lincoln, endorsed Lincoln, praised Lincoln. Members of the International Working Men's Association joined and became brigadier generals in Lincoln's army. That northern industrial economy, that was where Marx supported, and that backward slave plantation economy, that was what Marx opposed. And those two economies clashed with each other. And the defeat of slavery was a great moment in American history, but we know it didn't last. There was a compromise. The troops were pulled out of the South. British bankers as capitalism in America went into its monopoly stage and integrated itself with the British Empire and their financial system. But there has been a battle in America between these two economies that have existed. The industrial growth-based economy, the city-building tendency, and the oligarchical financial speculation economy, imperialism. That America has divided into two. And that if we are going to have any chance, and this is so important, if we are going to have any chance of saving America from barbarism, we must look at an America that is already divided into two, that already has dual aspects. And we must insert ourselves as supporters of the city-building tendency in American history. And we must go through all of U.S. society and understand that everything we see, even the most barbaric and reactionary things about U.S. society, has some dual nature. Everything. Everything in America, to some degree or other, has two sides to it. And that if we want to be relevant in American political conversation, we must find the good side. We must find the Lincoln against the slaveholders. We must find the labor unions against the bosses. We must find the anti-racists and the abolitionists against the slaveholders and the racists. We have to find the good side in America and align ourselves with it. And if we don't do that, if we see in America and we just poo-poo it, I want nothing to do with this, then we render ourselves to be irrelevant. The only way the city building tendency in America has any chance is if we find a way to insert socialism and to insert anti-imperialism into American history. If we find the two that America is divided into and we align ourselves with one of the two, that's the only way we can be relevant. That's the only way we can be relevant. And if we just stand on the outside and condemn, if we just sit there on the internet and yell and shake our fists, we have found ourselves in dereliction of duty, and we'll never succeed in our mission. Our mission is to break America out of imperialism. Our mission is to save America and build a new America that is aligned with the new emerging economy. Our mission is to destroy the oligarchical financial system, imperialism, capitalism in its monopoly stage. That is our mission. And if we do not find the good in American people, in American culture, in American society, and forces that are contending for power right here in America right now, and if we do not insert ourselves on the side of the progressive forces of good, then we're not relevant. Just like Marxism divided into two, America divided into two. That's the understanding I can give you. And honestly, the more you dig into American history, the more you look into American culture, the more you can find good. Americans believe in economic growth. It's in our bones. We believe that we can build a better tomorrow. We are an optimistic people. We are a deeply optimistic people. We tend to believe in fairness. We tend to, at this point, believe that people should not be judged on the basis of their race or their religion or their ethnicity. We tend to frown on bigotry. And furthermore, there are many things in American history that trace their heritage back to the radical egalitarian ideas of the English Civil War. I realized, when I worked in Washington, D.C., there were a lot of people I worked with who were Mormons. I knew nothing about Mormonism. I grew up in Ohio. Not many Mormons in Ohio. There were some, but there weren't many of them. But if you live in Washington State, you live in Oregon State, you live in Idaho, or you live in Utah, Mormonism is a big deal. And so I began studying the history of Mormonism. And we can all agree that the Mormon Church, as it currently exists, the Mitt Romney politics, the top religion of FBI and CIA, not big fans, right? They don't play a very good role in American politics. They are pretty pro-imperialist, etc. And I don't believe that Joseph Smith found golden plates. But I'll tell you what I do think is fascinating. This is not me. This is, believe it or not, this is from Wikipedia. I'm just going to put this on the screen. Right? And I didn't make this up. This is just a screenshot of Wikipedia. United Order. In the Latter-day Saint movement, the United Order, also called the United Order of Enoch, was one of several 19th century collectivist programs. Early versions of the order, beginning in 1831, attempted to implement a law of consecration, a form of Christian communism or communalism modeled after the New Testament church, all things in common. These early versions ended up a few years later. Later versions within Mormonism, primarily in the Utah territory, implemented a less ambitious cooperative program, many of which were successful. The order's full name invoked the city of Enoch, described in Latter-day Saint scripture as such a virtuous and pure-hearted people that God had taken it to heaven. The Mormon Church believed in communism. They believed in public ownership of the means of production, central planning of the economy when they started. Did you know that? No, this is certainly not an endorsement of the Mormon Church, of their teachings, or especially not the role they play now. But A does not equal A. All things change. And when the Mormon Church began as an expression of the Second Great Awakening, as a radical religious movement that was challenging the powers that be, one thing that was central in their beliefs, apparently, was a belief that you should have a socialist economy, the rejection of capitalism. Now, that's important. That's important to understand because there are things in many aspects of American culture that we don't know about, that we look past. We need to find as many things like this in the history of America as we possibly can. We need to find so many aspects of American culture, American history, the American mindset that we can identify with as socialists and anti-imperialists. We need to be scouring through the culture, scouring through the attitudes that people believe, scouring through the art, scouring through the movies, scouring through the songs and the music and the religion and everything we can find in America, to find something that we can unite with and connect to the city building tendency. That is our job. Yes, we can just sit there and condemn it. We can be like the answer rally that just waves the Palestine flags and says, fuck you, America. Yeah, we can do that. You can do that, and then we'll be irrelevant. We need to develop a socialism with American characteristics that the American people can identify with. And that's the only hope. And if there's anybody who has any common sense in the American government, they'll want us to succeed. They may not agree with us about Palestine. They may not agree with us about Iran or about Russia or about China, but they'll realize that having a group of people here who have found parts of the American mindset that are compatible with this new emerging economy, and they'll understand that that is necessary if we're going to have peace. You're not going to be able to have peace if there aren't Americans in this country who talk the way we do. There are plenty of Russians. I've been over there. I've seen it. There are plenty of Russians that are westernized. There are plenty of Russians who are looking at their phones and think that America's a paradise with streets paved with iPhones. Not the majority, mind you, but there's plenty of westernized youth in all the anti-imperialist countries. Well, just like you have your westernized youth in Russia, we need to build a movement of working people and working families that identify with the anti-imperialist camp. If we're going to have any cultural exchange and connection between peoples, we need to be able to exist. You need to let us exist. The American government needs to let us exist. And they need to understand that organizations like ours that preach anti-imperialism, that preach optimistic, constructive socialism, that reject terrorism and left adventurism, but advocate a peaceful democratic transition to socialism, and a socialism that is compatible with our American ideals and our American way of life, that we need to exist. We need to exist. We need to have whole sections of this country that agree with us. We need to have people in Congress who agree with us. We need to have neighborhoods and communities that agree with us. We need to have corporations and businesses that are operated by people like us. We need to exist. The world is multipolar, and just like there is American influence in China, and just like there is American influence and the influence of the American economy all over the world, there needs to be an influence of the rising Eurasian Economic Union, the rising BRICS, the rising Shanghai Cooperation Organization. There needs to be a bulk, a section of American society that identifies with that and its ideals. And if you don't allow this to exist, you're saying what we want is World War III. We're the cure for World War III. We are the cure for World War III. And the PSL and the Workers' World and the Communist Party USA and the woke left, they're not going to play the role that we're going to play. They want America to burn. They want things to get worse. But we're not socialists because we want to destroy America. We're socialists because we want to save America. We're not socialists because we want to condemn U.S. society. We're socialists because we want to save U.S. society. We're not socialists because we condemn what is bad about America. We're socialists because we have found the good in this society and we believe it is compatible with what is good in the world. We are Lincolnists. We are Rooseveltists. We are Gus Hallists. We are Huey Newtonists. We are William Z. Fosterists. We are Harriet Tubmanists. That's what we are. We're Debsians. We're Douglasists and followers of Frederick Douglass. We are the best of America. And I'm telling you, if there's anybody watching this right now, people around the world or people right here in America, we're the best chance you got. We are the best chance you've got. And we've already proved that we can withstand anything. They've hit us, and they've hit us, and they've hit us, and they've hit us, and we've gotten up, and we've gotten stronger. And every time they hit us, we get stronger. They've hit us with allegations that we're Nazis, we get stronger. They've hit us with cult allegations, we get stronger. They've hit us with every smear, every hit, and we just keep getting up and getting up and getting up and getting up and getting up. And we've proved that we are up to the task. And we've purged our ranks, perhaps voluntarily. But those who aren't up to the task have left. See ya. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. The weaklings, the traitors, the backstabbers have all voluntarily stepped down. Those who would not be able to stand the pressure. Those who are more concerned about their own self-interest in careers and not about the interests of the overall movement. Those whose jealousy and wrecker tendencies got the best of them, they've left. They've left, and they continue to leave. They come and they see this ain't the place for them. This is the place for people who want love. This is the place for people who want spiritual power. This is the place for people who want brotherhood and community. People see that. And those who don't belong here, exit. And those who want to be here and want some of the love that we offer, want some of the life and fulfillment that we offer, they stay. So anyone watching this right now, in any corner of the world, I'm telling you, if you want peace in the world, you want things to get better, this is your best bet. This is your best bet. I can't, in the next few days, I can raise awareness, I can highlight things, but in the next few days, ultimately, the fate of humanity is not in my hands. It's not in our hands. Right? We've been doing our best to beat the drum of anti-imperialism, to oppose war, but right now, whether or not the crisis in Gaza leads to World War III, that's not in our pay grade, as they say. That's in somebody else's department. But in the long term, you need us. America needs us. The world needs us. Support us. Let us have this beautiful conference in Portland, Oregon. Let us build our community of solidarity. Let us build our organization based on love and brotherhood and truly Christian and truly American values, opposing war and empire. That's my request. And I hope that there's somebody listening. I know there's probably a room in the FBI office where every time I do one of these streams, one FBI agent sits here and goes, all right, when's Caleb going to incriminate himself? Well, if you are that FBI agent who's watching, listen to me. I'm telling you, this is the best chance we got. This is the best chance that America has. It's us. We're not terrorists. We're not bomb throwers. We're not trying to create chaos. We're not foreign agents. We are the biggest patriots you'll ever meet. We are the biggest opponents of violence and chaos that you'll ever meet. We are the biggest lovers of truth and justice that you will ever meet. You know, that's what we are. So take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. You want to donate, help us do what we want to do? That would be great. Donations are appreciated. Goes right to the CPI to help us put on this conference. We're booking people's tickets. We're doing the best that we can. We got a job to do. We got a job to do. So on that note, folks, names and locations, names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Who is with us? I see we have a Rumble rant from Jamie Turner. I'll address that. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. I see on the Rockfin. We got 2 people watching on the Rockfin. We got a decent number of people watching on Rumble, and then we got all of you here on YouTube. Phil Sang in Miami, Florida. Carl in Washington. Ryan in Kansas City. Jenny in Cincinnati. George Muniz in Sydney. Your friend Finn in Duluth. Welcome, Finn. Patrick in Maine. Steve and Ann in Ringgold, Georgia. Names and locations, names and locations. Mike in Chicago. Welcome, Mike. Ottawa in Ontario. Welcome. Chris in Salt Lake City. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Gabby in Chicago says, howdy, 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 comrades. Howdy to you. Bob Troy in New York says hello. Jamie in St. Paul. Karen Mendes in Germany. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Brendan in Palo Alto, California. Welcome, Brendan. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to have you here. Good to have you here. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Colin in Greensboro. Kiwi Dave in New Zealand. Welcome, Kiwi Dave. Kiwi Dave. Kiwi Dave. Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. On we got Jamie from Boise, Idaho, and he's on the Rumble. Very, very good. Names and locations. Names and locations. We've got 2. Oh, Mariah in North Carolina. Shout out to you. Colin in Greensboro. We're well represented. North Carolina is well represented on these streams. But yeah, I've got 2 super chats here. So if people have more super chat questions, please shoot them my way. Because I got to have something to talk about here in the second half of the show. So please come forward with your questions. I am going to put on some Mormon music. This is an orchestral arrangement, including a little bit of singing. Oh, Scott S. and Moonlight Beach, of a classic Mormon hymn, which is one of their more interesting Mormon hymns. It's about, I think, the star that they believe God is on is called Kolob. And the tune is a traditional Irish tune. It's the tune of the Star of the County Down. Right? It's a classic Irish tune. But they slowed it down because that was a popular tune at the time the Mormon Church was being founded. And they wrote this very kind of mystical outer space, hymn. This is a classic Mormon hymn. And someone made an orchestral arrangement of it. So I'm just going to put it on for you. Enjoy it. This is an orchestral arrangement of the Mormon hymn High to Kolob, which is about outer space and stars and stuff. It's amusing. Enjoy. All right. So there you go. Thought that would be very appropriate for what I'm talking about tonight. So we have two Rumble rants that have come in. So I'll do the Rumble rants first, and then I will answer the super chats. We don't seem to have any Rockfin tips as of yet. So the Rumble rants, the first one is, there needs to be a Belt and Road project for the Western Hemisphere, connecting California all the way south to Argentina. Well, one thing that we have recommended is the Center for Political Innovation. We had an idea for a project called the Sandino Zapata Economic Corridor, which would connect California and the southern United States, the southwestern USA, to Nicaragua. And we would have China, just kind of like the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. We would name it after Sandino, who was the leader of the Nicaraguan Revolution, and Zapata, who was the leader of the Mexican Revolution. And we would create the Sandino Zapata Economic Corridor, which would be a project of development all through Mexico and down into Central America that would involve China, building high-speed railway, and we would target that area for strategic economic development as a matter of national security to stop the drug cartels, etc. The thing is, and I actually would love to bring that back. The same with Fusion City. The problem with it is that I don't have the capacity to write up a complex policy proposal like this. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a scientist. So we need people that are capable of doing such things to work with us. I can think of the idea, but we need somebody who actually knows how these things work to generate an actual document, an actual policy proposal. And, hey, if you like what we do and you want to work on this and you would actually help design such a thing, I would be all for it. I would be all in favor of that. Hey, we need people in CPI who can take on such work, but we right now we're barely, holding the group together as an organization. But such a proposal, I think, would be tremendous. I think would be tremendous if we could put that into practice. The same for Fusion City. I'd like to raise the issue of Fusion City. We'd like to talk about Fusion City again. Both of those projects were programs, proposals that would push society in our direction. Wouldn't be endorsing any candidate, but would be a way to engage in the political process. So, yeah, I'm all for that. Now, the second super chat from Unowen is, did you read the book The Great Gatsby? Yes, I did. Do you consider it an American classic? Though I have no idea what exactly it tried to entail. I read it in high school. I saw the movie version with Leonardo DiCaprio that came out a few years back. I wrote like some articles about it and stuff at the time, but I don't think I can find those anywhere on the internet. I think they were removed. But The Great Gatsby is a kind of pessimistic book, honestly. Right. So the plot is that there's, it's in, well, first of all, it's kind of interesting as someone who lives in New York City. It's about Long Island and New York City. So you have Manhattan, you have Queens, and then you have Long Island. Right. And Queens is technically on Long Island, but it's the part of Long Island that's very close to Manhattan. Right. It's just over the bridge. And outside of Queens on Long Island, there's very wealthy communities. They talk about East Egg and West Egg. And that's where the rich people, they all live in Long Island. But Manhattan, that's where Wall Street is. That's where Times Square is. That's like the playground. Queens is industrial. And in the book, it calls it the Valley of Ashes. It calls Queens the Valley of Ashes. And it's portrayed as this kind of dirty industrial wasteland. Manhattan is, the center of commerce, and the rich people all have their estates in Long Island. And it describes driving from Long Island through the Valley of Ashes in Queens into Wall Street, Manhattan. And that's a big part of the book. But basically the plot is that, in Long Island, there's this guy who throws wild, crazy drinking parties. It's the Roaring 20s, and he throws wild jazz drinking parties. And no one really knows who he is. And it turns out that he is a working class guy who fell in love with a very, very rich girl. And she wouldn't marry him because he was poor. So he went out and got rich convinced that she would then marry him. And so after he's become a millionaire through illegal alcohol, he's become like an alcohol gangster. He's become a bootlegger. He tracks her down. Her name is Daisy. He tracks her down and tries to get her to divorce her husband to go with him. And she doesn't. And she doesn't. And the reason that she doesn't is because she's not what he thought she was. In all the years that he was absent from Daisy, he blew her up into the perfect woman. In reality, she's just kind of stupid. She's kind of stupid and she's kind of shallow. And she's married this wealthy Wall Street guy. And what I thought was particularly interesting is the wealthy Wall Street character is a Nazi. And that's a big part of the book. The wealthy Wall Street guy, I can't remember his name, but he's the one that Daisy is actually married to. He's a white supremacist, and he's always talking about eugenics and racial theory. And that's a big point of the book. And that shows that among the circles of the rich, fascism was growing in the 1920s. Right? This book came out before Hitler came to power, but the wealthy guy, the Wall Street guy who's dumb, he's the one who Daisy actually married. He's a white supremacist, and he's always talking about, the need to fight other races, white supremacy, etc. And then the other thing is that, and then there's this couple, right? The guy who, I think it's Gatsby, or I think it's the main character, the guy who's like the observer, the narrator. The narrator and Gatsby, they always get their car repaired at this repair shop in Queens. And I forget, is it Gatsby or the narrator? One of them I think it's Gatsby, is having an affair with the wife of the car repair guy. And so basically there's like some drama, and Daisy won't leave the Wall Street guy for Gatsby. And long story short, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the auto repair guy ends up killing Gatsby and Daisy because he finds out that his wife is cheating on her. So I actually forget. I don't remember. They all end up getting killed. It's like a Hamlet ending, right? And there's some shooting and they all die. But the most important thing about the book, right? Okay, very good, right? The Nazi's name is Tom. It's Tom Buchanan, if I believe correctly. Nick is the narrator. I forget what his name is. His last name is. And the other thing about the book that's important to remember is, this is my analysis of the book, right? You asked me for my analysis of the book. I know, and I'm giving you my analysis. It's a pessimistic book. It's the lost generation. Gatsby is supposed to represent the American dream. Gatsby is supposed to represent the American dream. And the idea is the American dream is based on a lie, right? You're chasing a rainbow, right? There is no rainbow, but you're chasing after the rainbow's end. You're chasing the horizon. The American dream is an illusion. And that Gatsby has spent his whole life trying to get rich enough that he can just get Daisy to love him. And that's, first of all, she's not going to love him because she's not going to leave her husband for him, number one. And number two, Daisy is a dingbat. Daisy is a stupid rich girl. She's not the beautiful, amazing woman that he's blown her up in his mind to be. So basically Gatsby is supposed to incarnate the American dream. And like, I believe the opening lines of the book, it talks about like no one else had the passion that Gatsby had. He's supposed to be the most hardworking, fanatical, idealistic man who has a dreamy look in his eyes. He's supposed to be America. And the point of the book is that America has lost its way. America has become pessimistic. America has become hopeless. That's the idea. And it fits the themes of the lost generation a lot. What's weird is a lot of those guys were Marxists, right? It wasn't, F. Scott Fitzgerald, he was one of the big lost generation writers. You also have, the writers who came before World War II, right? You have who is it? Ernest Hemingway. You have John Dos Passos. And a lot of them were kind of socialists and leftists, but it was kind of like World War I had come and was awful. And now in the roaring 20s, everyone's got money. The economy is good again. But there's really all the belief and all the hope in America. It's all kind of gone. And we're kind of left realizing there's no point in life and that it's not worth it. It's actually quite pessimistic. The Lost Generation writers are quite pessimistic. And it's also worth noting that they were communists, but then they quit. John Dos Passos became a Trotskyite and eventually became a conservative, a McCarthyist. And that they became communists before the other people did. Now, John Steinbeck, he came later. He wrote Grapes of Wrath. And John Steinbeck was a communist later, right? And John Spivak and the guys who became communists during the Popular Front years. That was a different story. But these were guys who became communists in the 1920s. When communism, the U.S. economy was booming and communism was not popular, but they were alienated from U.S. society. And they were all from pretty wealthy backgrounds, but they felt like there was no point, there was no hope. And it was kind of, you see middle-class pessimism in it. And then they all quit when communism starts being popular. And that's the thing about them that gets to be particularly, and I think the big Whittaker Chambers, the big McCarthyist guy, that guy, he came from this period too. There's a layer of people who quit the Communist Party in like 1928, like the Trotskyites. And I got to tell you, those folks, the class nature of those people is not good, right? There's actually a book. I've got a book. It's over there on my bookshelf. American Communism in Soviet Russia. And I bought it. It's supposed to be, it's by Theodore Draper, and it's supposed to be like one of the big histories of communism in America. It ends in 1929. How in the hell can you write a history of the Communist Party of the United States and end it in 1929? That'd be like, I'm trying to think of an example. That would be like ending The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly right before the big the big shootout. I mean, it's like you're ending the movie. I mean, it'd be like ending Star Wars, right when they get to the Death Star, right? The heyday, the strength of the Communist Party, early 1930s, fight or starve, the unemployment councils, the mass organizing, late 1930s, the Popular Front, the anti-fascist movement, the industrial unions. And when people write histories of the Communist Party, and it ends in 1928, when people join the Communist Party, like John Dos Passos, like, Whittaker Chambers, people like that, and then they quit in 1929, 1928. Yeah, it's a layer of people that they were in it for some middle-class stuff. And when it became clear this was starting to take off and turn into a mass movement that could actually have teeth and going to the masses, look, these were people that to some degree or other, they had a foot in the Vandal tendency. I think that's really what it gets down to. And look, Eugene O'Neill, the playwright, I think he wrote The Iceman Cometh. He wrote The Hairy Ape. This guy was in that category too, right? Eugene O'Neill, is it Eugene O'Neill, or is that who it was? Eugene O'Neill. Am I right? Is it Eugene O'Neill? Who was it? I might have the name wrong. I may be thinking of another American playwright. But if you read plays from this time, is it Eugene O'Neill? Long Day's Journey into Night. Yeah, Eugene O'Neill. Right? Iceman Cometh. Yeah, Eugene O'Neill. I'm totally right. Eugene O'Neill, you read this stuff, it's all very pessimistic. Right? The Iceman Cometh is about the people who are hanging out in the bar, and they all have these dreams of what their life is going to be. And the traveling salesman comes in and debunks all their dreams and shows them that there's no hope. Long Day's Journey into Night. It's basically, about how these people all failed. And the mother is an opioid addict. The mother is a morphine addict. And the father was a great actor, but he played the same role for 40 years because he didn't want to take the risk of looking for a new job. And so he never fulfilled his potential as a great actor. And that, this is, 1920s, 19-teens plays. They tend to have the pessimism of World War I, the pessimism of the 20s. And those people, they were attracted to communism because it was foreign. They were attracted to communism because they were in intellectual circles. But when communism started to take off, they were out of there. Whereas Steinbeck, people like that, they got into communism when it was taken off, they saw this is the voice. I mean, if you read The Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck later sold out. He went in with McCarthyism. He became an anti-communist. But when when John Steinbeck was becoming a communist, if you read The Grapes of Wrath, it's beautiful. It is the expression of the workers' movement of the 1930s. It is the salt of the earth, working class suffering. So there you go. That's my thoughts on The Great Gatsby. Oh, and someone also, no one follows up with, I also read The Glass Castle, never read it. Then To Kill a Mockingbird, Gone with the Wind. Why so many American classics come with a depressing theme? All right. Well, I haven't read The Glass Castle. I can't comment on that. To Kill a Mockingbird is about the civil rights movement, right? It was written, it was published in the early 60s. And it's basically the Eastern establishment saying, we got to get rid of this Jim Crow problem because it makes America look bad. The hero is a wealthy white lawyer who is trying to get the white trash to just not be so racist. The black people are all portrayed as poor oppressed victims who couldn't possibly fight for their own rights. There's no class consciousness in it at all. It's just about how poor white people are a bunch of racist white trash, but educated lawyers can go down and teach them to be nice to people and not be so brutish. I have a whole video critiquing To Kill a Mockingbird. I will actually link it in the chat. To Kill a Mockingbird it's supposed to take place in the 1930s, but it misses the whole point of the decade, which is that there was struggle for black people's rights. There was struggle against the Jim Crow South on a class basis. The sharecroppers unions and the textile workers unions, the Gastonia strike of North Carolina in 1928, the sharecroppers rebellions in 1934. There was a real class conscious revolutionary upsurge fighting that included the rights of black people during the 1930s. And that is left out of that book. And that book is very much the elite New England liberals complaining about how the Southern white trash are no good, and the black people are all just poor oppressed victims who can't fight for their own rights. And it's a liberal piece of trash. That book, it's practically shoved down your throat in the United States. Like, this is how you're supposed to understand the anti-racist struggle. And it is from an awful perspective. There's no class consciousness anywhere in the book. Many people have pointed out that actually the way the woman is portrayed, the woman who pretends that she got raped, that's particularly classist. That she's basically, she's a whore, basically. She's a working class prostitute, and that, honestly, I think To Kill a Mockingbird, you might like it because it's written for children and it's sweet, and Atticus Finch is the ultimate ideal of a good, caring dad, but it's still To Kill a Mockingbird, I argue, is the liberal wing of the civil rights movement, and it doesn't tell the true story of what happened in the Depression, the class struggle. You can go watch my whole video critiquing To Kill a Mockingbird. One of my better videos. I wish it had a higher view count because I do good work sometimes, and I wish that work would get more views and stuff when I do work like this, because I feel like, this is the kind of analysis. But To Kill a Mockingbird is largely, it is devoid of any class content, and it distorts the history. So yeah, you can watch my critique. There you go. All right. Gone with the Wind is KKK propaganda. That's just the Democratic Party was trying to assert itself over the Republicans. So they wrote a propaganda novel about how the Republican Party betrayed the white people. It's awful. Gone with the Wind is awful, and it's fascist, and it's worse than that. My critique of Gone with the Wind is not only is it a white supremacist false history of World War I, right? That all the white people was living so amazingly. We was all living like kings until Lincoln came down here, even though like less than 3% of white people owned slaves. White people in the South got far lower wages because of slavery, because they were competing with people who worked for free. Slavery was awful for white workers, but it was propaganda to tell white workers, oh, if it wasn't for Lincoln, you would be living like Miss Scarlet. So it's that. But it's worse than that, because the way it ends, basically, Miss Scarlet is portrayed as a rugged individual. She's a Howard Rourke. She's a selfish bitch, right? She doesn't care about anybody else. And then even though she's a white supremacist, she ends up screwing over her own people even, right? So even according to their white supremacist narrative, she's still a selfish bitch, right? And it's supposed to be, she's like the hero, but it's like, and that's the weird thing is they say, well, it shows that you can't act that way. No, it doesn't, right? Because many, many people say that she's like a feminist icon, right? She's this woman who just doesn't care. And it's about how the world is unfair to women who just go out and it's awful. It's awful, right? Miss Scarlet is supposed to be this hero because she's a woman who doesn't give a shit about other people, right? She uses convict labor, right? She has, prisoners work, to get rich. And she, as the Southern civilization that's portrayed as so great, which it wasn't, it was slavery, as it's falling apart, she fucks over her own people and manages to get rich also. And then Captain Butler, who's got some, solidarity with the community, he leaves her, right? And that's the famous line in the movie, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. But the point of the book is supposed to be that, the world is just unfair to women. Women, are relentless, and some women will just never give up to fight for their community or whatever. But, I don't know. Gone with the Wind is a piece of trash in my view. I mean, it is fascist. I mean, it is literally fascist. It's white supremacist, it's anti-Lincoln, and it's also like Ubermenschen, caring for other people is weakness. It's Ayn Rand shit. It's toxic. It's absolutely toxic. And, it's some Ayn Rand, Friedrich Nietzsche shit. That's what I think Ayn Rand, that's what I think Grapes of Wrath is. It's some compassion is weakness. It's some Anton LaVey, edgelord. I don't care about anybody. That's what it is. That's my opinion. But there you go. All right. Explain what created cults like Scientology, New Age stuff in the 1950s, seems centered in California, loosely related to the New Left. I mean, look, the intelligence community is going to have its fingers in anything, right? I mean, right, in America, this is who we've always been, right? I just played for you a song the Mormons were singing about outer space and, there is no end to and there is no eternal life in outer space and stuff like that. That was written long before L. Ron Hubbard was ever born. That was just a Mormon hymn. Like, this is who we are as Americans, right? I mean, this country was founded by religious dissenters. This country was founded by people that are mystical and feel like they have a connection to a higher power. That said, is the intelligence community going to stick its fingers in that kind of stuff and meddle with it for their own purposes? Of course, right? Just like they meddle with everything else. They meddle in the media. They meddle in, the movies, the art, and the culture. So why wouldn't they meddle in that, right? L. Ron Hubbard, he was an intelligence officer. We know that. He was an American U.S. Navy intelligence officer. And he was doing psychological experiments with people that had PTSD. And he figured out this kind of hypnosis method that he could use with people that had PTSD. And he probably literally believed, I think he was just, he literally believed he was helping people. I don't think he was, but, it was just this hypnotic PTSD treatment he developed that doesn't actually help people. But I think L. Ron Hubbard was a very egotistical fellow. And it looks like, yeah, he was involved in the intelligence world, and they may have played some intelligence purpose for a while, but it's very clear the American deep state is against them at this point. I mean, they have too much power in Hollywood. And that's really clear. I mean, if you look at it, the Leah Remini stuff and everything that's happened, they are on the wrong side of Hollywood, right? And they were with Trump and they're with Epoch Times and they're on the defensive, basically. But their sun is setting and the American deep state is clearly turned against them. That doesn't make them good. That doesn't make their religion true. That doesn't make them good. But they're an illiberal institution. They are at odds with, the Democratic Party, with Big Pharma more than anything, just because Big Pharma, I mean, we're sending pills to people like crazy. They don't believe in psychological medications, and, they are an illiberal institution and they do have a lot of power in Hollywood. And that's just something that, is a threat to the liberal order. And, I mean, my hope is that as a result of, the fact that they're at odds with the liberal order, they would eventually become some kind of anti-imperialist group. They're not doing that right now. They're not, right? Right now, the Church of Scientology, they are with Epoch Times. They're viciously anti-China, viciously anti-communist, and they're just kind of look, they are the lower levels of capital. And this is one thing people have pointed out to me. Scientology is a pay-to-play thing. I mean, you got to be quite rich to do Scientology. Scientologists, people that are really into it tend to have a lot of money because it ain't cheap. And it's the lower levels of capital. It probably accurately reflects, the ultra rich aren't into that stuff, but there's probably a lot of wealthy people in Southern California that's their go-to, right? And it gives them kind of a cathartic release. They relive their painful experiences. It gives them a release. It gives them kind of an elite community they can join. They get to be with Tom Cruise or whatever. It's an American religion, subculture, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It's one of those, what do you call that? I don't even know what you call it, right? Scientology, it's kind of in a category of its own. It's technically a religion. It markets itself as some kind of mental health treatment, but the mental health community says, no, it's bunk. Part of me is tempted to call it occultism, mysticism. They probably wouldn't like that. They insist it's science. So I don't know, just whatever it is, not my business. I have no beef with the Church of Scientology. They've never harmed me. I've never harmed them. But at the same time, I don't think they're going to play a progressive role at any time soon. And did intelligence have something to do with creating them? Absolutely. L. Ron Hubbard himself was an intelligence officer, but they became their own thing. They became their own thing pretty clearly. And especially in the last couple decades, I mean, if you look at the way things are being portrayed, I don't know about what Danny Masterson did or did not do. Okay. But the more I look at the details of that and the way it's portrayed, there's a political angle to what's happening there. That doesn't mean he didn't do anything wrong. That doesn't mean he's not a rapist, right? I don't know the details of the case, right? And apparently there was some medical evidence. So I'm not saying Danny Masterson is innocent. Please don't get me wrong. It was weird as hell how his friends got canceled just for saying maybe give him a lighter sentence because he was a good dude in some other ways. That was ridiculous. When I saw the two other That 70s Show actors having to apologize just for like writing a character letter to the judge before his sentencing, that was ridiculous. And the way the press played it up, even if he actually did everything he said, it was a highly political case. So I don't know. Scientology is just an institution. It's got a lot of power in Southern California. Here in New York City, they don't have that much power. They have some. I know there's a big church on 42nd Street. There's a Church of Scientology. I will say I've never had anything to do with them. Other than the fact that I support the Nation of Islam. I do think the Nation of Islam is a good group in the Black community, and they practice the Church of Scientology, right? I'm friends on Facebook with a number of people in the Nation of Islam, and they are aligned with the Church of Scientology. So when I would see Scientology people handing out stuff on the street, I always say, oh, are you with the Nation? If they're African-American, and they'll often say yes, and I'll give them a thumbs up and talk to them about how much I like the Final Call, how I've been quoted in the Final Call before. And, that's a way I can just kind of be friendly. My understanding, I've never tried it, is that if I were to go in for auditing, I wouldn't be allowed to. They don't allow journalists, and I'm a TV news reporter. It's one group that you cannot be audited, and they also don't allow communists. They actually have a questionnaire. They have a questionnaire when you go in to get auditing. One of the questions is, are you a journalist? And if you're a journalist, they won't do it because they're used to so many people writing hit pieces on them, number one. And number two, the second question they ask is, are you a communist? And they say they won't let you do it if you're a communist because they think communists are all spies, that L. Ron Hubbard the KGB was after him or some shit. So I couldn't be a Scientologist even if I wanted to. So, I mean, it's just not something I don't know. I went to a reception a few months ago. There was a young guy who was like a Scientologist who was there, and he seemed really friendly. He was like 19, 20 years old. He gave me his business card. So I called him. I thought, I could try to talk to him about stuff. And I think he never responded. I think he was terrified of me because I'm a communist. So whatever. I would have tried to just befriend the guy. I would have been curious who this young guy was. Why in the world would some young 20-year-old join Scientology, especially now, right? And if he didn't grow up in it, what in the world? I would have just been curious to hear the young man's story, but he never followed up with me. Gave me his business card, seemed really friendly, but I called him. Nope, no call back, no text back. So I figured, okay, all right, well, that's that. I like the Nation of Islam. Church of Scientology, I have nothing to do with it. But they are part of the emerging American political drama. They are, and they are at odds with the liberal order, and they're now in that Epoch Times block. And they were with Trump, and I've talked about this on previous streams. So I mean, yeah, is the intelligence world involved in that? Sure. But it seems the intelligence agencies don't like them now. So I don't know. There you go. Hope that answers your question. Do you think Iran will enter the war against Israel? I mean, Israel's already blaming them for everything Hamas has done. So there's that. But like, if Iran and Israel go to war, that's the end of humanity. I mean, because Russia and China will attack, will defend Iran. The United States will back up Israel. Let's hope not. Let's hope that in the next few days, whatever happens in Gaza doesn't lead to the death of all humanity. I mean, I'm horrified by what's happening to the Palestinians and all of that, and I mean, I wish none of this was happening, but let's hope that whatever happens in a way that like the human race doesn't end, that we don't have like a nuclear exchange. But yeah, Israel going to war with Iran, that leads to America and Russia and China going to war. And that's bad. That's very, very, very bad. Very, very, very bad. So let's hope not. Let's hope that everything possible prevents that from happening. All righty. Was Picasso ever a true believer in communism? I mean, I don't know. I mean, he apparently, especially, in the World War II and post-World War II period, he joined the Communist Party. He made paintings in honor of Stalin and in honor of the Soviet Union. He got the Lenin Prize for Art. So that would point to yes. That said, his artistic style was contrary to communist doctrine. The Soviet Union and the communist parties of the world in that period really emphasized they believed in socialist realism. And the type of art that Picasso engaged in was against what the Soviet Union believed in. However, he was an anti-fascist and he admired them and he joined the French Communist Party. He was a card-carrying member. And the Soviet Union gave him big awards and he said great, amazing things about Stalin. So everything would point to yes. But it is fair to point out that his artistic style was very contrary to what the Soviet Union and what Soviet intellectuals and what Lenin and Stalin and, the communist world said they wanted in art. They did not like the kind of art that he did. They didn't. They didn't like Cubism. They didn't like that stuff. They liked social realism or socialist realism. So, I mean, if that put him at odds with the official Communist Party doctrine, I don't know. But yeah, everything in his biography, if you look over Pablo Picasso in his life, everything about him indicates that he was a hardline ML, right? And I think he died in the early 60s, and that he was friendly with the Soviet Union. He praised Stalin. He praised Mao. He, anti-fascist, card-carrying member of the French Communist Party. I mean, what more can you say? I mean, it seems like he was, even though his artistic style was contrary to what the party thought one should do in art. So there you go. There you go. Seen 2 films of The Great Gatsby, but found your description much more enlightening. Well, thank you, Kiwi Dave. I do my best here. Do my best to give people an analysis that is useful to them. Sometimes people ask me questions that I can't answer very well, but whoever asked that Rumble rant, and no one has a follow-up Rumble rant. Reading your MAGA book, quite optimistic vibe, should be considered an American classic in the future. Well, thank you, Anoan. I'm doing my best. I hope you like it. Maybe drop a review on Amazon after you're done reading it. Always appreciate it. I went on the Kim Iverson show to discuss that book. Kim Iverson apparently liked that book. So there you go. There you go. All right, folks. It's been fun. I'm going to put on the closing music. I'm going to put on the closing music and then, I'll be back tomorrow at noon. I'll be back. Upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries
have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.